Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of the Leadership Speak series at L Forum. Today, I've had the privilege of inviting a person who is an entrepreneur, a CEO, and an investor, and he has had the distinction of having bought six companies and sold 5 of them successfully, and now he's looking for his next venture. So, hello, Joe. Welcome to our show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. And I've had the joy and privilege of briefly working with Joe Covey when he was selling one of his companies, I think many moons ago. So Joe, as I told you, this forum is for entrepreneurial leaders, and we welcome and invite leaders like yourselves and want to hear your story and your journey. So would like to hear from you, your journey as an entrepreneur, investor, CEO, and a leader.
Sure, yeah, I had an interesting journey and maybe an unusual one compared to some other entrepreneurs. I started my business career and I was running venture-backed companies, and I had investors who were taking a risk and writing checks to fund some tech startups. And I grew those companies and was a part of a team that helped sell those companies. And when they were sold, my investors reaped the rewards, and I made some smaller rewards. And so I had this idea that perhaps I could do this on my own without outside capital. And so sort of 2 halves to my career. The first half of my career was running these businesses with investors. And the second half was when I decided in 2008 to look for a business to buy with a business partner and to do it with my own money in the hope that if I'm successful, I would reap the benefits. But of course, if I wasn't successful, I would feel it. And we started with a business that was a small division of a cable television company here in the New York area called Cablevision. They had a small channel called MagRack. And my business partner, his name is Matthew Davidge, he found this opportunity, and we decided to buy the business and run it in our own scrappy entrepreneurial way. So when it was part of Cablevision, they had a lot more resources. They also had some financial obligations. They had corporate allocations. A small division of a big company has to pay for things like the CEO's private jet and the fancy offices. And we ran this business out of a very modest office on 57th Street here in New York City. In fact, it was so modest that the carpet was beat up and dirty and stapled to the floor. And we cut a piece of that carpet out and framed it and hung it in the entryway so that we could remember this experience. We thought, this is a reminder of where we started. And so that business was successful. We grew it. We ran it with a very small team. We had educational television content, how to cook, how to exercise, how to take care of your kids. And we thought, this is working out great. We should do it again. So we found another small business to buy. It was also another television business. However, that one didn't go quite as well. And it was actually good in retrospect to have had one success and then one less successful venture. It was sort of a humbling experience, and it reminded us that, perhaps we got lucky the first time. Maybe it wasn't our skills or our decisions that were leading to the first company's success. And so we ended up buying 6 companies over about 15 years. Sold the last company a year and a half ago. It was an education company called Med School Tutors, which helped educate doctors, in fact, during the pandemic, which was very rewarding. But it was quite different, buying companies, owning them and running them with our own capital, because even though I ran those venture companies and I said to myself, I'm treating this money like my own money. The truth is, it's different when you go to the bank and wire a large percentage of your savings in order to buy a business. And I then would come home and tell my wife, I bought this business, and watch the blood drain from her face. And she said, are we going to be okay? And I said, of course, everything will be fine. And then I went in the other room and thought, oh my God, what have I done? I sure hope everything's going to be fine. So yeah, we learned a lot of lessons. We had some ups, we had some downs.
Sounds straight out of a Seinfeld series, right?
It's been a fun ride, and I think there's something to be said for being an employee and for running a business with investors. And it's just a different experience, one that I enjoy more doing it on our own. And one other thing I'll say is that the businesses we've bought are not necessarily venture type businesses that have huge growth opportunities. They're often a little bit old and dusty, and they need a little love and attention and support. And in big companies in particular, sometimes these little businesses get swept in the corner and people don't really give them the support they need and the investment they need. So we bought a second business from a big company, which was from NBC, and it was TV networks in hospitals. One is called the Newborn Channel, which almost every mom in the United States watches when they have a child, how to put on a diaper and how to breastfeed and basic things that moms need to know. And that was a great business. It helped people, it educated people, it made money. We were in almost half the hospitals in the United States. But in the world of NBC, it was so small and insignificant that it didn't move the needle. And so it didn't get the support that it deserved. So this sort of path to where I am now has been interesting and unusual because I meet entrepreneurs all the time, and typically they have ideas for a startup business. And there's no infrastructure, there's no anything. There are people sitting on cardboard boxes with an idea. And that is super exciting and thrilling, and there's great opportunity, great upside. But it's different than what I've done. I bought these businesses that were going concerns, and they needed a little love and a little support. And with my business partner, we've provided that and had a great time and some interesting experiences.
And I can only imagine, and I know each of them would be. I could make a series around each of them. I think one episode with you, because I remember when you and I were briefly, colleagues of some kind, under the same group. I remember you were at that point just exiting that investment. So, and you were telling me, and even then, this brief period I knew you, I would come to you to hear all your war stories and all the fun and not so fun stories that you had to encounter on a daily basis.
Yeah, so we had our share, because as opposed to being part of a big company where you just do one role and then you pass it to someone else to do the next role, we did everything. We found the business, we ran the business, we sold the business. So it's not like we passed it on to another team to take this next step. You're right, I did. I remember sharing some funny stories with you.
So which kind of brings me to my next question, Joe, is you have had to rely and trust the folks on the ground, or the operational folks, which is, in other words, you had to empower them at some level, your money, and then hope that they were doing the right things. So my simple question to you is, what is your definition of empowerment?
Yeah, empowerment is it's many things. Primarily, I think it's the power to control and make decisions and set goals, create opportunities in your life or in your business. And it's challenging to do that with a team, as you said, who are on the ground, and empower them as well. But there's a certain amount of confidence that also plays into it. And in our case, buying these businesses and being completely autonomous with no investors and no one looking over our shoulder, we had to really feel empowered that we were making good decisions and that we were capable of following through and implementing plans and hitting projections that we set. And it's some of it I think is learned over time, and some of it I think is just, there's an element of you are feeling more confident and more a believer in your ability to do something. There's a lot to it.
So did you have a playbook as to how you went about your empowerment, and what benefits did you see from empowerment?
Well, I think my earlier part of my career, where I had a boss and I had colleagues and I had people that were more experienced than I was an opportunity to learn and to feel, observe how other managers and executives exert their power and feel empowered to make good decisions. And the confidence that goes hand in hand with it is something that took time to come, because in the early days of my career, I was clueless. I grew up in a family of doctors. No one was in the business world, and I didn't have any contacts, and I didn't have any mentors, people to kind of teach me along the way. I stumbled into a couple of jobs after college, which were an opportunity to learn and watch and absorb everything I could. But I didn't have a role model from a young age who was an empowered business person. I had a number of doctors who were empowered in their own way and were in fact doing more admirable work than I've done, saving lives and making sick people well. But it's a process for me to feel, it's been a process to feel empowered and to feel that I could take these risks and that I could hire people and give them a lot of decision-making power. So no one wants someone looking over their shoulder, breathing down their neck, as I didn't want that with my investors. And I know my employees, who I think have been successful, have thrived because of that, because they have that autonomy and that ability to make decisions and implement things, ideas and plans that we put in place.
Do you have any anecdotal example of war stories to share with us where your empowerment was really a competitive advantage? And you said you have successfully managed to exit 5 of your 6 investments. So you have done something right with regards to the empowerment. So could you share maybe anecdotally any small thing, an incident or anything that comes to your mind where your empowerment really came through for you? And then obviously it did, but we would love to hear that if you can.
Yeah, sure. I mean, one of the things that I found unique to our business strategy, and it plays into us feeling empowered and exerting that decision-making process, is that I have a business partner. We use our own capital. We make decisions very quickly. And so we bought a business from a large company, from NBC, and there was a process in which different acquirers, potential acquirers, bid to buy the business. We were not the highest bidder. We were sent away. About 90 days went by, and we hadn't seen a press release or an announcement that the other acquirer bought the business. And so we reached out to NBC and said, hey, what happened with that business? And they said, oh, kind of going slowly. We're being due diligence to death. The exclusive period just ended. And we said, let us back in this deal. We'll close the deal in 1 week. It's crazy to say you could close an acquisition of a company in 1 week. But we knew, first of all, NBC is very buttoned up. They had accountants, they had lawyers, they had all the resources to run and present the situation accurately. And we didn't have outside investors to get approval from. We didn't have a board. It was the 2 of us. That was an empowering experience. We said to each other, over a cup of coffee in a Starbucks here in New York City, is this the right deal? Yeah, it feels like the right deal. We contacted NBC, we got back in the deal. We didn't close it in 1 week, but we did close it in a few weeks. And we later met the other party who was trying to buy the business. We learned that they got a call from NBC, and NBC said, someone else is going to buy this business. Are you ready to go or not? And they said, yeah, sure, you have someone else who's going to buy the business. Well, in fact, they did, and it was us. And they were good people, and we got to know them as they were competitors in the space later. But that is a moment where you have to have confidence, you have to feel empowered, you have to feel the ability to make decisions, and you also have to be a little crazy, because it was a large amount of money. And there are those moments when, as an entrepreneur, you do crazy things. You walk across the street to a bank and wire a large sum of money, and you have to believe, like entrepreneurs always do, that this is going to be successful. Those experiences are easier to think about now than they were at the time when I was, losing a fair amount of sleep. It worked out well. It was a great business. And my business partner and I laugh about it all the time. We think, oh my gosh, some of the things we did, we were nuts, but there was some intelligence behind that nutty behavior.
I'm sure, like I said, as I reminisce some of our and little anecdotes you would share then, I would always walk out of your office after having a good laugh about how you could turn a very precarious situation into something that all of us could have a good laugh and walk away, And I think that's one of your strong traits, Joe, the ability to see the humorous side in every situation. And I think that's very important as an entrepreneur, to find the funny side.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. Look, I mean, you have to have a sense of humor. It's a crazy world. Running a business is a crazy experience. There are a lot of odd things that seem to happen. And if you can't laugh about them, you're missing out. You have to.
Very tough.
Especially during stressful times, because there's no shortage of stressful times. As you know, running a business, on any given day, there's numerous fires to put out. And, we take it seriously and try to make good, prudent decisions, but we also have to keep a sense of humor about what we do.
Absolutely, Joe. And I think, which kind of brings me to my next question is, what are the challenges of empowerment? Do you see any challenges when you empower teams, and have you encountered challenges?
Yeah, I mean, when we bought the business that I mentioned from NBC, there were employees there who had worked for NBC, arguably one of the largest, best media companies in the world. And they came to work in our crummy little office on 57th Street, where we didn't have a support staff and we didn't have a lot of the resources and the amenities that they had in their previous world. But we had an opportunity. One of the employees said they felt liberated. They felt like they had the ability to make decisions. Another employee at the time said, I spend one day a week preparing reports, just reporting up to senior management. And I had told them, with my business partner, Matthew, we don't want any reports. We want one email once a week that says, here's what the revenue was this week, and here's any major issues. And so that freed up that employee, one full day a week to go back to focusing on running the business rather than kind of bureaucratic work that's less productive. And so those tools and those changes were good for most of the team. And I think it empowered them. They felt like they were able to roll up their sleeves, do real work in a little entrepreneurial, scrappy company. Perhaps some of them missed some of the benefits of a big company. There's some nice things that are missed when you run a smaller operation. However, this autonomy, this empowerment and ability to make decisions and sort of, you have an idea, let's go ahead and do it and run with it, I think was more gratifying to some of the team than anything they had done. There was one individual who I thought, having been at NBC for 20 plus years, may not sort of fit into our little entrepreneurial world. He was fantastic. He was an entrepreneur at heart, even though he had been at a big company. And so I don't think he was empowered in that company in the same way. He was empowered because he was a senior executive, but he was not still able to just make a decision and go with it, and hire people and empower them to make decisions and go with it. Not everyone is comfortable with that at first, but over time, people got better and more pleased with that they had those abilities. I mean, I meet people all the time at big companies, and I know many of them love it and they have very rewarding jobs. But personally, I think running a little company, being a part of an entrepreneurial team is way more gratifying.
I couldn't agree more. And in fact, in this forum, Joe, I've had the privilege of meeting leaders like yourselves. And I think almost all of them echo a similar sentiment that it's liberating. It's stressful. It's crazy, as you rightly said.
Yeah.
But at some level, it's liberating. And that liberation is something all of us at some level try to strive all through our lives. So,
yeah, I mean, in previous generations, people worked at these companies, one company for their entire career. And I think our generation and the generation even that's come after us are getting a more rewarding and an exciting career by having different opportunities at different companies. Some places you're more empowered, some places you're less empowered, and working in a variety of opportunities, I think is really better.
I totally agree. So my last question for our little conversation today, Joe, is what advice would you give young leaders, young entrepreneurs, as they are kind of sitting on that cardboard box and thinking about their next idea about empowerment? What would you suggest to them?
Yeah, I think that there's something to be said for surrounding yourself with people, one way or another, who have done it before, whether they're mentors or they're people who have been entrepreneurs and had some success. Even entrepreneurs who've not had success have a lot of lessons to share. And when you try to create something from nothing, there's nothing more rewarding than that. But it's scary. And as you hire people, which is one of the most difficult things to do in any business, is hiring well. That takes years, I think, of practice, because not everyone will be empowered on day one, and not everyone can become more empowered over time. Some people are cut out of a different mold and are more comfortable with very rigid directions, and they may not thrive in an entrepreneurial environment the way others will. And so a young entrepreneur, talk to people, see if you can meet people who've done it before, who've grown companies and sold them, or grown companies and then hit a brick wall and had problems and had to pivot and go in different directions. Almost every entrepreneur I speak to has had to shift gears along the way. And there are lessons in those conversations that one would learn about managing people, about empowering teams, and how to create an organization with the right culture that has people feeling good about themselves and also is financially successful business. It takes time to get there. It's probably not the first one out of the gate for most people.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. Thank you for your words of wisdom. I'm sure young leaders who are listening to this or seeing this will find value there. And I think, nothing like experience, and nothing like you very rightly said, talking to people who have failed sometimes is probably far more beneficial than, of course, good to speak to people who have succeeded, but people who have failed can tell you what not to do, which is more important, I guess, sometimes.
Yeah.
So yeah, entrepreneurship can be a very humbling and a very leveling journey, but very liberating and very exciting as well.
Absolutely.
So Joe, thank you so much for your time. And
thank you.
As I mentioned, this is a forum that I've been kind of trying to build for entrepreneurial leaders like our community. And I'm hoping I will be able to bring you in for many more such sessions. And we have a lot of interesting ideas and plans for the future. I seek your participation in this group. And thank you for your words of advice. And I wish you and your team all success, and hopefully you find your next investment soon.
Thank you. Pleasure. Great to see you.
Like, share, and subscribe to the EL Forum channel.